Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide.
Hey, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
I'm going to admit that what we're going to talk about today is one of my least comfortable topics. And I feel how you all feel if you're thinking, yeah, I probably visit my anxiety about this on the children. And that is math. I have I have a long history of math anxiety. And I probably have mentioned that on episodes that we have recorded in the past where we mention math. But I think it bears repeating in this episode because it is true. I have a long history of math anxiety that I'm now going to tell you to please not visit on the children. And
yes,
there are reasons that I found so startling about why we need to emphasize high quality, meaningful math interactions with children. There has been so much talk in our society about literacy and the fact that it lays a foundation for future success, which, you know, literacy, super important. Everybody's got to keep doing literacy.
Yep. Yeah.
That said, there's new research. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm looking at the research over on my right. That's what I'm looking at. There's new research, and the research shows how very important it is that we all as adults, if you have math anxiety, we need to get over it. We need to learn about effective interactions with children while doing math, because the current research shows that actually it is mathematical abilities and thinking that lay the groundwork for future problem solving and logical thought that will set these children up for success. That there actually is more of a correlation between early, meaningful math interactions and later school success across subject areas than exists when we're looking at literacy and its impact. Now, both have impact. I'm not saying stop doing literacy. I'm saying literacy and math must be done in equal measure, at least, because it is, in fact, math that is showing to be the thing that sets children up for the sort of thinking and problem solving and logical thinking they're going to have to do in the years ahead.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Because math is such a problem solving kind of subject, right?
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense that it would lead to problem solving, critical thinking skills as an older child, right? I mean, that makes total sense. It totally links up, right? But
it does.
I don't know how literacy got to be the one that everybody is so...
Because there were national and international campaigns. There were campaigns about the word gap, the 30 million word gap between children who were growing up in more at-risk communities and children who were growing up in more affluent communities. There were campaigns like the one called Talk, Read, Sing that was attempting to close that word gap, which needs to be closed. I'm not trying to say it doesn't need to be closed. There was also Get Set and Read. There are, book fairs. There are, like, literacy has just been at the forefront of everything we have done. The problem is that math took a back seat, and it's actually math that is helping children prepare for the future. But get this, here's an interesting statistic from our research. Math apparently is nearly absent in American preschools and pre-kindergarten classes. And there's a study that showed that in preschools where children were spending 6 hours a day, math got an average of only 58 seconds per day. 58 seconds. And come on, folks, you know what that 58 seconds is. It's in that large group time where you are pointing to a calendar and saying, let's count how many days since, no, that's not even how you use the calendar. We've talked about that before, that children need to be using math in real and authentic ways, and that's not it. Calendar is not it. If you want more information about that, just look back in this podcast. So that's, when they say math is getting 58 seconds. And then what I'm reading goes on to say, what's more, the spare moments of math are taught incorrectly. learning to recite numbers does not get children far because the children are memorizing, and we actually need to be laying the groundwork for logical thinking and problem solving using math skills. So
Yes.
we need to think about, am I leaning away from math because I got a message that math wasn't so important? I also read that there seems to be a prevailing attitude in our society that math is a skill that young children cannot do in any way, and so it can wait. It can wait for the years to come, but the truth is it cannot wait. It needs to begin in our infant classrooms, just like early literacy does. And in our infant classrooms, we point out shapes, that's geometry, colors, which helps us sort and classify. As we get older, right? We point
putting things
out
in size order, we do. Like put things in size order. That's mathematical.
We count your fingers. We count your fingers. We count your toes. We do
you
all
do
that.
all those the finger plays that are the 5,
Yep.
4, 3, 2, 1 finger plays, or the ones that go up. Yeah, I know. So we do all that with infants, right? That's going on in infant classrooms.
It should be. No, but it's not, apparently, according to the studies.
You don't think, oh, it's not. I was thinking maybe, and I was going to say, but maybe not. Maybe my epiphany is wrong in that we do that a lot with infants. And then when they get to age 3, all of a sudden we stop. Is what I was starting to think. Is that, no, you don't think it's there at all?
I think people are going, this is the color red, this is the color blue. I don't think intentionality is being given to our use of math skills, and
I think like pointing out things is not the way they learn anyway, right? I mean, because they need to be active in the learning, right? Like, so you sitting there like, oh, this is red. And they're going to be like, yeah, cool. I don't care. But if you were sitting there maybe saying, go find the red one.
But with infants,
that gets them thinking. But I know, infants, it's bad. It's different.
But even with young infants, so young infants starting at about 6 months old begin to categorize things. They know who they're comfortable with, who they're not comfortable with, who looks like the people I'm used to, who doesn't look like the people I'm used to.
Who doesn't.
Right? They begin to categorize things. So even if you're working with infants and you say, look, this is red, this is blue, like have those conversations with them, and then it builds from there. And you may be right. I mean, we may kind of stall it when they're in the 3 to 5 year old classes thinking, no, I have to spend the majority of the time on literacy because that's been proven to do so much. And it apparently, the new research shows it's actually the math doing all that. Equal time. I'm going to champion for equal time.
Time.
If you're doing small group activities, one should be literacy and the other should be meaningful math. And I keep saying meaningful because it isn't just about counting Legos every day or sorting beads every day. There's a lot of other things that we can do with math. So, I mean, even here are some examples, when we talk about sorting things like, children are eating, make a chart about what they're eating and tally that, or make a graph or something like that. Graphing, charting, tallying, and using math in real and authentic ways. For example, instead of sitting in your large group time talking about the weather, bring the children to a thermometer or have a thermometer where we can sit and read the thermometer together and talk about the numbers on the thermometer. That's
because you know what I like about that suggestion, Cindy, is that you're not only then tackling math because you're talking about the numbers on the thermometer, but you're also tackling science, which science is often forgotten.
They're tied together,
you can tackle both of those at the same time. And there you go. And it teaches them, they're going to remember that more than you just saying, hey, it's cloudy today. Or if you do want to do the whole weather tracking thing, then make a chart out of it and do it by the month. I used to do that. Like, we're going to track for all of September. And then when September's over, I would put it in a book and be like, you can use this. And I used to keep it in the science center and be like, and you can sit at center time and take that book out and compare, what does September's weather look like compared to October's weather? You can do that. And I used to have children do that, and they would say, oh, wow, it doesn't snow in September. That's how they would figure things out on their own. It was through the graphs that I would make and then laminate and then put into a book. So like you could do it that way instead of just talking about it, like actually make it more meaningful, something that they could graph, something they could chart, noticing the thermometer and what does the thermometer do, and are the numbers higher today or lower today, and then using those numbers for something, and like noticing things. And I feel like they need to see that numbers are being used all the time. And sometimes they don't, because I think it's something that we just gloss over on a calendar, and like, yeah, they're like, we don't care. It's like calendar is not as meaningful sometimes, so like, but a thermometer might be.
I think we feel limited in our own abilities. Like I know to
Yeah.
go over in the manipulative areas and count things over there with them. We have counting bears.
Yes.
We've got other things I know to
Yes.
do that. You need a scale. We should be weighing things and looking at balancing, right? And what's equal and what's not equal, what's more, what's less, and using the scale for that. But I think that we feel, a lot of adults anyway, feel just, I don't know what to do beyond that. And what I want to challenge everybody to do is think about how to make math just something that's always in front of the children in real ways. I don't remember if I've mentioned this in the past, but one time I was working with a program and I sort of challenged them before we even had these studies. I challenged them to make math more of a visible thing in their classrooms in ways that it could be used daily. And what they did was they put up, you know how horses are measured in hands? They put hands with numbers on them, kind of going up one on top of the other vertically.
Okay.
It started with 1 at the bottom, went to 10. They hung up 10 cutouts of hands going up in a place where the children used to line up to leave the classroom. So while they're waiting to leave the classroom, they could measure themselves against these hands and take a look at how many hands tall am I? I hope people are getting a visual of this. So it was these hands, 1 at the bottom, 10 at the top. How many hands tall am I? And they learned that some animals are measured in how many hands tall are you? We can measure how many hands tall we are. And the children consistently did this through the year. And what they discovered was, they grow pretty rapidly in these ages. They discovered that some children were this many hands tall, but now I'm almost this many hands tall. And they were using math in a real way. Also, whatever you have in your space, it was great. Whatever you have in your space, number it. You know how I'm always telling people put up visual schedules. The children need a visual schedule. So you can't number the segments of the day because sometimes you have to change it, but maybe number the number of like Velcro spaces you have for the cards. And then you can talk about how many segments of our day are we doing today? How many? So if you have a Velcro with a 1 over it and another Velcro with a 2 over it and another Velcro with a 3 over it, and then you put your daily schedule on that Velcro, you can count how many things are we going to do today? How many segments of the schedule are there? And I feel like that's way more authentic counting than a lot of what goes on.
Yeah, because I also think that shows them time, and like time is like a mathematical thing. And like, and then they can start, like in my classroom, I had a lot of children who cried in the beginning of the school year. It was the first time they've ever been in school. And the way that they would relieve their anxiety would be like, how many more things until the bus comes? And that was their thing. I'm like, well, we have snack and it would be nap, snack, play, meeting, home. And I would go to the schedule and be like, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more things. And then it's bus time, and so now that they're not as upset because we've been in school for a little while here, they go over themselves and they will be like, oh, look, here we are at lunch. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more things to do. And then I'm done, but it was, I don't have it numbered over there. I might number it now that we're talking about it, because I think that would add to this now.
Yeah, but because then they're connecting numerals with the number. They need to be able to connect numerals with this, with the sound of the number.
Yeah, but then it helped me understand like who has the concept of time, because I think that's a mathematical, like, do they understand like concept of time and what comes next? And I thought that was like a really cool way to do that. But yeah, numbering would be great. I think that's a good idea. I might do that tomorrow, actually, when I go in.
At these, you're welcome. At these ages,
Yeah.
they also, telling time is really more advanced than the preschool ages, but I can show them the numbers on the clock and we can look at what do these numbers there are numbers on the clock. What do these numbers mean? Hopefully you have an analog clock to do that, not digital.
Yeah.
But to just show them the numbers and how they stand for time. And that's kind of a abstract concept for them, but at least they'll be able to see the numbers in real use. And you mentioned time is one mathematical concept. You know what else is? Mapping, making maps.
Oh,
if we make a map
that's a great idea.
Of our school, or a map on how we get to the playground, because it uses the same sort of problem solving and critical thinking that a mathematical operation would, only the children aren't ready for those mathematical operations. So even to take, if you're in an area where you can take walks, to say take the same walk over a number of days, and then we're going to come back and map it to decide, how do we every day get to the playground? Let's practice mapping that. That's another nice way for children to use that sort of thinking. There was another one too I was thinking about, not just mapping. Mapping was one of them, but I don't now, of course, this is me and my age, like I'm losing it.
I know. What I was thinking about was money. So I'm sure many people in their classroom have like a cash register in their dramatic play. And I have like the pretend money that's in there, right? And they might not know that like this is a $20 bill and this is a $1 bill, but you could practice using and counting the money as you're pretending in dramatic play. So if you're pretending it's a restaurant and somebody comes up with a check and be like, oh, here's $20. I mean, they don't know what $20 means, but you could be like, oh, but that, I'm going to give you 2 bills back. And I'm going to put 2 into the cash register and push the number 2 and hit open. You can kind of practice it that way. And it shows them like it matches the number 2 that's in their head with the $2 bills with the 2 number on the cash register, or whatever it is that whatever number you're practicing that day or you want to do. Like, I think that's a good way to get them counting and seeing the numbers on the bills, which they might not know yet, depending on how old they are. But at least get them familiar that there are numbers on these things, and we can use the numbers in the cash register in a meaningful way.
Yes. And if you go online, if you're thinking, I don't know, I'm kind of math anxious. If you go online, there's a lot of information about getting over our own math anxiety. And I want to share that with everybody too. So there are 3 messages that educators need to keep in mind, according to the researchers. One is perceptions about who's supposed to be good at math, and the notion that people who are good at math are born that way are very harmful. We can learn math. I told you before, math is always, for me, something that I was very insecure about. If I'm going to be really honest with you all, and I like to be honest with my preschool peeps, if I'm going to be really honest with you all, I'm actually pretty good at math. I can do the math. I can.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of me getting over the notion that I wasn't born that way. So I really relate to that. Some people are not, right? Like, there are things that we all are born with particular intelligences, and sometimes it's math.
Yes.
But also you can learn it.
Yeah, because I think what we hear, or at least when we were kids, we heard, oh, she just doesn't have a mathematical kind of mind. And I feel like everybody can have a mathematical, it might not be your natural thing that you're intelligent about, but you can learn. That's a skill you can learn. But I think people categorized us very early of like, oh, she's got more of a creative mind, not a mathematical mind, or a scientific mind, not a creative mind, or whatever it is. And then it makes you think like, oh, that's just not who I am. I don't have to be good at it because I'm not mathematical.
Well, many of us also grew up with the notion that it was okay if you were a girl not to be good at math. That was more of a male thing. Absolutely. And that was years ago, but still a lot of people think that way, unfortunately. We also have to create classroom cultures, according to the research, that normalize struggling with ideas and making mistakes, that it's not a bad thing to struggle with problem solving, make a mistake and have to go back and fix it. So the ideas that we got when we were young, that you have to get the right answer on the math test the first time, or you're no good at math.
The first time.
We need to get over that. We need to see math as an opportunity to work with children on problem solving, and even to show them that I'm not perfect and I make mistakes at it too. I have no problem saying to young children, let me look at it because math is a little harder for me. I have no problem saying that to them.
I have no problem saying to the children, like, oh, I made a mistake, but it's okay. Let's fix it. Let's see if we can figure it out. I say that to them at least once a day, but definitely more than once because I make a lot of mistakes. But like, I'm very willing to just admit my mistakes and vocalize it so that they can hear this, so that hopefully like their inner dialogue becomes, oh, it's okay, I made a mistake, we're just going to fix it. You know, because you can fix that kind of stuff, and you're not going to be good at something right away. You know, practicing it makes you better at things.
There were also, some of us were math traumatized because we struggled with it. And teachers back in the day did not have the same sort of sensitivity. Perhaps all of them, some did, but not all. And they would, you know, if you were sitting there struggling, so you weren't raising your hand, they would be like, because you're not raising your hand, I'm calling on you.
Raising your hand.
So, so there was a sort of a stigma and a trauma attached to being in math class, because they're going to call on me whether I raise my hand or not, and I'm nervous about this and I don't know it. So that's another reason why.
Might be wrong.
Yeah.
Right. The answer might be wrong, and we didn't have that sensitivity towards making mistakes back then. You know, so yeah, no, I never raised my hand in math class. I wasn't going through that embarrassment. But now I feel like we can make it a very normal thing. Like, it's okay. Like, yeah, it's okay if you raise your hand and the answer is wrong. It's okay if you didn't have it figured out the first 5 minutes. Not everybody's going to, you know, like, keep going.
And I want to acknowledge that math trauma and feeling debilitated by it is very normal. And it's because of how it was treated when some of us were young. I know there are people listening to this episode right now thinking, I've been cool with math all along. I don't know what these people are talking about. Just know that some of us were very traumatized in math class, and that's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
I really don't want to set the children up for the same sort of feelings that I felt were so challenging when I was young. And so instead, when we take a deep breath and we kind of think, okay, we're just going to look at this as teaching children problem solving skills, we may lean more into things like, how do I make math an everyday part of every day, and lots of conversations, just like I do with literacy. Because again, the new research that just came out shows it's actually math that's going to set these children up for success in the future. So ponder that, preschool peeps, and look around your spaces. Do I have the same amount of literacy and math up on my walls? Do I need to take some of the literacy down to make room for some math and have an equal amount?
Yeah.
Are we doing math in real, authentic ways with children in our small groups? Or are we just pretty much going over and going, let's count the Legos you're building with? Which is good, and you should.
Which is good.
But also, I have to think more. I have to do more to lay the logical thinking. So think of it. How about if we take the word math away for people who struggle with that and just say, am I doing enough logical, linear, this to that thinking with the children? Because that's what's going to set them up for future thinking, cognitive thinking skills.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to just let everybody sit on these stats. What do you think, Alison?
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, we should challenge people to do more than 58 seconds a day of math. And I'm not saying it's going to be like an overnight, like, complete turnaround. So like, if you're one of those that is doing 58 seconds of math today, then tomorrow say, you know what, I'm going to do a minute and a half, and then build and just keep building and building and building, and look around your classrooms and see how you could just add it in naturally. Right. You know, like the numbers thing or the hand thing that you were saying is a very natural thing. That'll just work itself.
I remember what I was going to say before.
Yeah. Okay, good.
When we were young, we were young, we were told not to count on our fingers. Today's advice is, yes, count on your fingers, because your fingers are always available to you. So where we used to say to children, You have to know it without counting on your fingers. That is no longer the prevailing attitude, just so everyone knows. Counting on their fingers is fine. So you can encourage the counting on their fingers. They're going to be fine. Let's face it, this generation is going to grow up and use calculators. And one more thing before we go, right? One more thing before we go. Please don't keep this in your early childhood programs. Please let families know that it's actually math that's going to lay the strong foundation for the future and provide them with resources to understand how to use math at home. Look for them.
Yeah.
All right. I feel
good point.
I feel like I've said the word math way too many times now, and we need
Way
to go.
too
It's
many
starting to
times.
not
It's gonna
sound
give us
like a
anxiety.
word anymore. Yeah, and I'm starting not to sound like a word. All right, preschool peeps, go back and check for your math. It's laying the foundation, and we will be catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.